All right, here we are on filmsgonewild.com, and we're with Jessica Earnshaw, who's the director of the documentary Jacinta, that's screening at the Hot Springs Documentary Film Festival. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I know, I think it's always funny to say it's a show. It's not a show, but you know, it just feels natural to say that.
Yeah.
Okay, you start us off. Tell us what the film Jacinta is about.
So the film Jacinta is about three generations of women in Maine. I met a mother and daughter incarcerated together, and I followed the middle generation Jacinta for a few years. And it looks at the bonds between the women, who are all obviously mothers and daughters. And it's really about generational trauma and how that can pass through generation to generation.
Now, it was interesting to watch. I mean, I love the film, and I almost wanted to call you right after I watched it, you know, just to talk, just to hash things out.
You should. Right? You
could. but you know, because it's that involving, and it gets under your skin in that way. But I was interested to talk to you one thing about how you balance the focus, because Jacinta is your main, you know, your main subject that things hinge on, but it is three generations, and so you're also balancing her mom, and you know, and you're balancing her daughter with that. And talk about that process as the filmmaker. One, while you're filming, while you're getting footage, and then two, once you're in the editing bay and you're delving out how many minutes, so to speak, for each person.
Yeah. So when I was filming, I just filmed. I tried not to make choices in the moment, because I really didn't know where the film was going at the beginning. I knew, you know, the mothers and daughters part of it, but ultimately following a verite story or filming in a verite way and following someone's story, you don't really know where it's going. And I didn't also know really what moments were significant at the start. So I just filmed pretty much everything that was happening. And so as far as the amount I was filming with each person, I did spend the most amount of time with Jacinta. Like, to give you an idea, I filmed 30 consecutive days with Jacinta leading up to her relapse. So, and that's only, you know, 15 minutes or something into maybe it's longer than that, into the film. And then when it came to balancing, I mean, it was really about, you know, finding the moments that I had filmed that were the most, you know, that said the most about Jacinta and her experience and also her relationships, and kind of deciding, you know, along Jacinta's journey, what we were revealing, you know, because I think Jacinta that's the main storyline, but we have Kaylin and Rosemary revealing things kind of along the way. And so that was kind of, I wasn't filming them in the same kind of way as Jacinta, where they had like a full story arc. So yeah, I mean, it was difficult in the edit because I had over 400 hours worth of footage. So it was like it was heartbreaking. There's so much stuff that I loved. I mean, this film could have been like 5 hours long. I wanted it to be 5 hours long, but no one else thought that was a good idea.
Well, yeah. Well, here, you know, I oftentimes ask documentary filmmakers about their eureka moment, that moment where they said, this is the movie. Like, you know, and sometimes it's during an interview, you go, oh my God, when somebody says something, you go, oh, that's it. And sometimes it's, you know, it's an edit that happens, you know, while you're in the editing, you go, oh my God, there's the movie. Was there a moment like this while you were filming where you said, oh, this is it, this is the movie right here?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there were bigger moments of that and smaller moments. And there were a lot of moments that like were repeating constantly, that I have a lot of, that were just like, almost like the universe being like, no, this is it, this is it, this is it. And that was, you know, especially when I first met Kaylin and Jacinta visits her, that moment of Kaylin in the car with Jacinta, where she basically is like, basically really questioning her decision to leave the sober house. That whole day with Kaylin was really like, I was like, oh my God. And, you know, I had thought, you know, prior to this in the prison, moments with Rosemary, were those moments for me also, but it was really meeting Kaylin that I was like, I mean, I already thought it was a film, but when I met Kaylin, I was like, no, there's something really special about, in some ways, how you could almost see Jacinta's relationship with Rosemary by looking at Kaylin's relationship with Jacinta. It was like time in some ways, like it didn't exist, that I could see back into the past almost, you know, because there were moments with Rosemary that I then saw repeated with Jacinta and Kaylin. Like the moment on the bed where they're like wrestling together, Kaylin and Jacinta. There had been a moment in the prison, almost exactly the same between Jacinta and Rosemary. At the time, I thought this might be a photo essay, so I photographed it instead of filmed it, which is like a regret. But there were like those kind of moments that were mirroring each other that felt like I was being, you know, I don't know, those are like special moments where you're like, okay, I see the story. There's like glimmers of it.
And, you know, we talked about this in an earlier conversation about the concept of a filmmaker's responsibility toward their subject. And you are supposed to be, you know, our eye, right? You're supposed to be, the omniscient viewer, but you can't help, you know, when you spend that much time with someone, to care about their well-being, even if you don't spend that, you care about people. So, you know, and there are so many moments in this where I thought about that, where I thought about you and camera crew and people. They're watching the decision she is making, and you know, and what you're, you know, and how you're like, you know, wanting to wrestle her to the ground and go, do not do that, and you can't, but you kind of can. I mean, you know, and again, I would love for you to really take some time to extrapolate on that, to talk about that.
Sure. I mean, leading up to when that happened, where she relapsed, I'd spent like I said, like 30 consecutive days. These are long days, like 6 to 7 at night, like just hanging with her, being with her, filming. When that happened, it's like, I have a line where as a filmmaker, and I think it's just like as a human too, I can't wrestle like her to the ground, pull her out of a car, like, you know, just like normal boundaries, like, but I definitely didn't shy away from trying to like convince her to do something different, you know, like I didn't want her to use, like I didn't want to be filming it. I didn't want the story to go that way, you know, like I really believed in Jacinta's dreams of, you know, being sober and having a relationship with her daughter. And it was, for me personally, like caring about Jacinta and we were buddies at that point. Like, I mean, it was heartbreaking. I mean, I like didn't actually know if I could continue even working on this, because it was so heartbreaking for me to witness it. And I didn't know if I could continue working because I didn't know if I was strong enough to witness it, you know? But in those moments, and you know, it's not like she just used and then stumbled back in immediately. She used, and then there were days, at least a few days, where she wasn't using, and then she like fell again. But I was with her all the time, so I caught those moments when she did, and I would try to get her to stop. Like and I'm constantly talking to her. Like I would ruin scenes. You know, my poor editor had to cut me out of so much because I'm just a chatterbox, like blah 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 in the background. And in the scene where she's on the bed and you do see her using, I was like trying so hard to get her to stop, like, and she just didn't want to. And that's the thing. It's like I've had this kind of question come up before of like, you know, the responsibility to stop somebody, and people can question whether or not that's a filmmaker's role. Personally, for me, I do feel that it is. I'm a human being before a filmmaker, and I'm not just like totally passive. Like I said, I was trying to get her to stop, but it's like, it's not so simple. And if it was that simple, then we could rescue a lot of people who are addicted to things, you know, because Jacinta didn't want help. And I tried to get her treatment. Like I brought her stuff. I was, you know, desperately trying, but you know, she had made that decision. And the decision for me to continue filming didn't come right away. It was over the process of at least a couple months where we had another conversation where I was like, look, like, do you want, she wanted me to continue filming, because for her, she was kind of like, you know, let's I want my story to help somebody else, you know? She felt like completely stuck. And in some ways, she is kind of stuck. She's been using since she was 15. Like, she's just like, if this can help me and other people, let's do it. And she trusted that my lens was so much more on her as a human being and her with her family members. And it wasn't going to be like I was going to try like disrespect her in the drug use stuff, you know, like whatever we use was going to have a deeper meaning than just it being about drugs. Cause I don't feel like drug use is only drugs. There's so much more stuff, you know, trauma and other stuff that leads to that. So
Well,
anyways,
you
hope
know,
that makes sense.
and you know, and I think it's wonderful that she had that attitude about it, because there are moments of just devastating honesty. There's no way to put else to put it. You know, like I think about the moment when she says about, is it Lucky? Lucky is the guy that she was with.
Yeah.
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 And you know, at a certain point where she talks about, said, you know, the person above you is supposed to help you, but actually you just end up dragging them down to your level. And that was such a heartbreaking moment, you know, of her honesty with herself, and her just unvarnished look into the camera to tell us that too. That was something. The last question I had for you, which I also, when a filmmaker makes a film like this, sometimes you then become a little bit of an expert on the topic, and you become a little bit of a spokesperson on the topic. Has that been the case with you thus far with this film as you make the rounds with film festivals and what have you?
I mean, I definitely don't think I'm an expert in the topic because I can only speak for Jacinta and what I've seen in her family. I'd say that I spent so much time trying to understand Jacinta's life, and I'm sure, and I do know now in this process that, and from everybody I met, because I met so many people around Jacinta and women in the prison, that this story is not unique. You know, there are so many women that go through such similar situations. We shared this film. I shared the film with Jacinta before we locked picture on it. And then she shared it with some of the women in the prison. And there were conversations with these women where they saw their own story in Jacinta's, you know, story, and they were able to reflect almost on their own experience in a new way by being able to see someone else go through it. So I feel like if I'm gonna, you know, try to be a spokesperson on anything, I think it's the generational nature of addiction, because it is so common. And also just like, you know, there are a lot of things that bind people to this kind of this life, especially in, you know, Jacinta's case. It's like everybody she knows is addicted, you know, and it's like, you know, and it's also very hard, I think, when you come out of prison and you try to get your life back in order when you've never had like some kind of normal, and then you have no structure and you've been in some ways institutionalized. So I think there's a complicity on us as people in communities to, you know, it's important to look at, you know, I think I've had, you know, when we were pitching this film, there was a lot of questions about should you show the footage? Should you show the using? And I think it is important to see people where they're at, you know, especially if they're willing to be seen and not be scared to look, you know, because I just think that we continuously don't want to look and just don't want to, and just feel like this is like, it's just addiction. There's so much more than that. And I think we need to, like, you know, I don't know. Sorry.
Well, no, listen, I agree. You know, as I said, I think the film is bracing. It's heartbreaking in the moments, and shocking because of things that just like you're saying, we don't always see. We talk about them, but we don't see them happening in real time, so to speak. Again, the film is Jacinta, and we've been talking with Jessica Earnshaw. Jessica, it's been wonderful talking with you about this film.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so that is it for me. I'm going to get out of here, and Justina's going to connect you with the next filmmaker or next.
Okay.